Thank you. The giants are back. Giants were recorded just twice in Israel's history. From the time previous to the flood, to the ascension of King David, and today. In between, 2,800 years, no giants. They're back. We're going to try and figure out why. Luckily for Israel, our aliens are extremely gracious. They leave us physical evidence absolutely unique. We don't fit any pattern. And there's a direct relationship between ancient sites and our UFOs. Let's start at the very first UFO of the wave, the new wave. 1987, September, Ami Achrai is driving to Haifa. He sees what he thinks is a disabled helicopter. Pulls over to the side of the road, gets out of his car, and there is a flash, a beam of light, and then goes away, disappears over the Mediterranean. 2 days later, he returns, and on the sands of Shikmona Beach is burnt into the sands is an image of the UFO, about 15 meters across. And what's important is what wasn't burned. The vegetation that remained showed an image of a pilot, a UFO-naut, 3.5 feet tall, in front of a control board. They left us their picture. And that was in the end. 8 months later, another one. 15 meters across. No picture of a UFO this time, but they did it again. 4 months later, UFO over Shikmona Beach explodes into thousands of shards. The scientists, we now have, after 3 Shikmona Beach incidents, we have people called ufologists in Israel. They go to the beach, they pick up these shards. These shards are glowing, but they're not hot. You pick them up, they turn into white powder. Put it in your hand. They were tested by the Technion Institute of Technology. 6,000 times the magnetic force within this burnt image. The material was a very, very pure magnesium. And that's the story of Shikmona Beach, except for one remarkable thing. 100 yards up the beach is something called Elijah's Cave. It's a biblical shrine. Elijah, if I will remind you, is a biblical prophet who challenged the Canaanites to a contest. They took 2 bulls, they tethered 2 bulls high in the Carmel Mountains, and Elijah challenged their god Baal to roast the bull. Well, Baal let the Canaanites down. The bull didn't roast. But when Elijah called upon the Israelite god, a beam of light, zap, presto, roasted bull. Beam of light 2,400 years ago, a beam of light today at Shikmona Beach. Inside the shrine of Elijah's Cave is a drawing, an ancient drawing, biblical drawing of a UFO. Call it what you will. It's the exact same shape that was burnt into the sands of Shikmona Beach. Exact shape. I took the sightings crew, and they refused to include it in the show. It was another show. They actually had a fight. One said, that's a coincidence, this is a bat. They drew a bat. Then I took Michael Hesman, he said, come on, this is the same shape. Whatever it is, beams of light, 2,400 years separated, were shone upon the sands of Shikmona Beach. I believe there's a biblical connection. Didn't happen for 2,400 years. It happened 10 years ago in Israel. There was a little hiatus after Shikmona Beach. 1991, Eli Cohen, we saw him near Kadima, 2 miles away. His house shines inside for 2 nights in a row. Finally, he's had it, borrows a video camera, and in broad daylight manages to get his UFO taped, as we just saw. They were scouting Kadima. They were looking around in 1991, because in 1993, they came back and big. April 20th, Sipot Carmel. 6:30 in the morning, she wakes up, Saturday morning. Once again, her house shines from within. Goes outside, sees a fruit silo, a metal fruit silo. And she says to herself, who would build a metal fruit silo in the middle of the night? Then the fruit silo builds itself a second story. This isn't something that Tzipora Carmel expected. She looks a little, maybe 10 yards, and there's the giant. Israel's first publicized UFO encounter, April 20th, 1993, a 7-foot giant, metallic clothing, wearing what she calls a beekeeper's hat, a sombrero with a veil in front of it. She isn't frightened. None of these people are frightened. She says to it, take off your hat, I want to see your face. It answers her telepathically. That's the way it is, can't be done. She has 2 more circles over the next 10 days. Within the circles are 2 materials. One is a silicon. Now, I'm pleased to report Michael Hesemann took an example of the silicon and had it tested in Germany, and it's the same result as in Israel. Purest silicon possible. So far, mankind can't get it that pure. Certainly not natural. Just out of... Anyone wants to see it later, I brought some. Okay, you're more than welcome. You put your hand in these circles, and it comes out red. Okay? Now, I didn't like it. It didn't come off easily. And who knew if it was radioactive, it would eat through the skin? I mean, it's not something that you necessarily want in your hand. Nonetheless, it was collected, tested. It was mostly cadmium. Now, you have to remember, Israel didn't have, except for Shikmona, didn't... My Lord. Well, if I get thirsty, I'm finished. We didn't have a UFO flap before. This was brand new. Now, what are we going to do with our first giant? We wait for the next giant. And it didn't take long. Palmach Street, Kadima. Down the road is Mara. She's a Russian immigrant. Mara's got a real problem. Her house shakes. It shakes so profoundly that the air conditioning unit, which is very heavy, falls out of its casing and into the house. Voices call her in her childhood nickname, Marishka, Marishka. She just moves. She doesn't want this anymore, and she just moves. May, Shosh Yehud. Shosh Yehud is sleeping. She wakes up, and there's your 7-foot giant right beside her bed. It says, I'm not here to harm you, telepathically, of course. And she believes it. There's not panic among these women. It floats, she says, as if on shoes. Straight up, but floating. She thinks it's a dream, wakes up in the morning, thinks she had a weird dream, opens her window, backyard. There's your 4.5 meter diameter circle, filled with cadmium, filled with silicon. So we got 2 giants. Next, and this is a very good case, Burgata. Burgata is a few miles down the road from Kadima, Chana Somech. Now, Chana Somech is up in the middle of the night and sees her dog fly across the kitchen wall and smash into it. She goes outside, and she can't quite go outside because there's a force in the way. She looks and sees the same 7-foot, round-eyed, bald-headed giant wearing metallic clothing. But she's angry. She said, what did you do to my dog? Yeah. And it says to her, get out of here, I'm busy. You're interfering with me. Go back inside the house. She argues a bit. She says, you hurt my dog. And he says, I can hurt you too, but I don't feel like it. This alien was a thug. You've got no fantastic messages of wisdom from these aliens. They told her to get lost and they meant business. So there's a TV show on in Israel. You just have too many giants running around. The country wants to have the answer. So they have a TV show with Shosh and Yehud and a few ufologists. And to the utter shock of the announcer, the audience believes that there's giants running around the country. People phone. 2 more women. Clara Kahanov from Cholon and Batya Shimon from Rishon LeZion. Now we're away from Kadima. We have a new access form just south of Tel Aviv. Cholon, Rishon LeZion, and Yatzit. I'll show you in 1 second what that's all about. I phone up Clara Kahanov, and she says, yes, it was a giant. I don't want to be publicized, but you're... Same thing. Round-headed, bald, giant. Same thing. Batya Shimon was much more forthcoming. I've had many, many conversations with her. Batya Shimon had a wonderfully ridiculous experience. 3 in the morning, in come 2 aliens. She's not on a ground floor. She's on a 5th floor apartment. In they come. And as usual, they telepathically tell her, you're not going to be afraid. We're not here to harm you. And she believes them. She thinks they have a pleasant face. She likes them. They roam around her apartment dusting shelves with a foul-smelling, sulfuric material of some kind. One of them goes into her son's bedroom and sees the aquarium. Son has an aquarium. Gets all excited in some alien way. This one is also floating on his feet, upright. Calls over his pal. They go into the bedroom. They both start pointing at these fish. They're very excited about these fish. They've had enough. Out they go. Next night, the whole gang comes in. 12 of them. One after another, floating in the apartment. They're walking around. They're dusting. They're picking things up. They're looking at it. They thank her. They go like this. Out they go. Now, not that these are friendly people. Just so you understand, Batya and Hannah, I've spoken to them many times since. They're haunted. Wherever they go, their voices are called, their names are called. Both reported pregnancies that disappeared. They couldn't understand these pregnancies. Who knows what happened to them? But only Tziporet is happy about this particular phenomena in their lives. Batya's aliens were 7 feet tall, round-faced, bald, round-eyed, no nose, barely a nose, metallic clothing. They're all the same. Now, needless to say, statistically, what are you going to do? You got now 5 women. They don't know each other. They are all the same age, 39. Go figure that one out. They're all white-collar workers. There seems to be some genetic basis for all this. I don't know what it is. We don't know. But if anyone had any doubts that there were giants in Israel, well, they were all solved at Yatzitz. Okay, January 1995. Herzl Casatini, the town security chief and a successful businessman, is in a home having conversation with his friend Danny Ezra. They hear an explosion. It rocks their house. Herzl opens the door, and there's a 9-foot monster outside the door, metallic clothing, but this time the face is covered with what he calls an electronic haze of some kind. He calls his friend, he slams the door, first of all. This is not the visitor he had expected. The explosion, he thought maybe it was a truck coming too close. Explosions are also connected with Shosh and Mara. Both their houses shook from whatever this was. Calls his friend Danny over, opens the curtains just a little bit. Danny faints when he sees this thing. Herzl picks up the phone and calls the police. Police don't believe him, of course. He says, I'm the town security chief. He gives his army rank, and they come in 20 minutes. What the police find are tracks, deep tracks, 35-centimeter deep tracks for 8.5 kilometers. They call in the army. Now they think there's a terrorist attack. Unfortunately, not an uncommon occurrence where I live. They follow these tracks. Now let me describe the tracks. I took my wife, the kids, I took everyone to see the tracks. It was the circus. The place was filled with people wanting to see these giant tracks. Now, here's what they look like. Whatever this was, the heel, the sole, the balls of the foot went down 35 centimeters. The heel went down only 5 centimeters. So whatever this thing was, it walked on a kind of tiptoe. Okay? There was a third round track which made no sense. You had some people think that it was a kangaroo or something. Where's the third one came from? I figured it was a walking stick of some kind. It was round, it looked different than the others. Some of the tracks had a gap of 12 feet between them. Now, to make a 35 centimeter track, this was estimated. I put my foot down as hard as I could. I jumped. I got in a couple millimeters. This was hard ground. This thing had to weigh a ton. It was enormously heavy. Now, you've got the army in there. You've got the police in there. You've got a convoy of trackers. The Israeli authorities have to give an explanation of some kind. Now, what we seem to have, if this is a human, if this is actually a human being, we seem to have a record-breaking broad jumper weighing a ton. So obviously it wasn't a human being. So the Israeli authorities decide it's a camel, and they announce it's a camel, which is a problem because this camel must have been wearing boots. With heels and balls and everything, we've got ourselves a camel wearing boots. Now that didn't work out too well. So another explanation had to be given. And here was the final explanation of the Israeli authorities. It was a weird cult, a weird unknown cult that did this. And I'll tell you it was weird, because this cult, as part of its ceremonies, apparently dressed up as giants and made unidentifiable tracks for 8 kilometers. Now, you know which cult does that, then the Israeli authorities were absolutely right. But obviously they weren't. Another giant landed. Now, from Yitzitz, the phenomenon spread. And what you had after Yitzitz was, here's the list. Yes, we had him in Ramat HaSharon, we had him in Rehovot, we had him in Afula. We were having giants all through 93 to 95, and they all looked the same. The giants were back, and it was indisputable. The witnesses were superb. The physical evidence, now once again, let's say it was a hoax for some reason. What kind of a hoaxer, first of all, makes 24 circles, throws an incredibly pure silicon inside them, and then sprays the circles with liquid cadmium? It's a very complicated hoax. If it wasn't a hoax, then we got giants. And we did have giants. In 1996, everything changed. The giants stopped, and for the very, very first time, we had our first grays in Netanya. I did this case with Michael Heseman. And I'll tell you something. I'm just going to give a description because I want to get back to the giants, but the first grays in Israel were really something. Daryl Sims flew into Israel. I told him, you got to see this. An apartment in Netanya. Netanya is 4 miles from Kadima, 5 miles from Kadima. It's that same axis. Now, we got an apartment with a little girl and her stepmother, who are just being carried away constantly. But what made this odd was they told me ahead of time when the spirits come in, or whatever these things are, and they're little grays. The little girl described the little grays. They said there's a stink. Said a stink comes out of nowhere, and it's the worst stink you ever smell, and goes right through your sinuses and lands in your throat. And so Daryl and I go there. First of all, the woman, her name is Shoshana. Daryl does the fluorescent business. I've never done this. The woman's hands are glowing green. The palms of her feet are glowing green. I stick my hand under there. I'm not glowing green. All right? Her body is just pockmarked with needle marks, just every which way. The husband was absolutely impossible to deal with. I won't even go into that. But Daryl and I are having a little problem with the husband, and then I'm standing by the window, and I breathe in the most disgusting odor I have ever in my life encountered. And it's stuck in my craw for a long, long time. And I said, they're here. They're here. Daryl comes over. He says, they're here. There was no electrical appliance. There was no outlet. There was nothing. And then this smell started jumping. It started jumping from side to side, from wall to wall. And I said to myself, I'm in a haunted house. He says, I just don't want to be here. This is not normal what's happening here. We've got a new phenomenon in Israel. The giants gave way to grays in 1996 for a little while. Now I'm going to discuss giants again. Now you have to understand that Israel, in my opinion, have had 7 indisputably documented close encounters. There are many more, but I like physical evidence. I'm really very tough about this. I want my little silicon shards, and I want my hand to turn red. I want a stink that I can't explain. I have very, very harsh rules of journalism when I investigate these things. So I found 7. Yetzites, come on, 8.5 kilometers of tracks. That'll do. That's just fine for me. Others have told me about the giants, but there's been no physical evidence. So I say 7 cases. 6 out of 7 that are indisputable, in my opinion, are giants. In America, the percentage is 80% small grays. Why Israel giants? It's not happening in England. For that matter, in England, are you getting things burned into your sands? No, you're getting crop circles. So what you've got in Israel, connected with ancient sites, are indisputable physical phenomena. They want us to know about them. They want us to know about them. But I'm going to add something. It hasn't been pleasant. I have very few people who say that they've been uplifted and now they can heal and things like that. Most people, Herzl Casatini, I'll give you one example. The next day, one gonad of his swelled to the size of a good-sized balloon. He goes to the hospital. I saw the medical reports. It says right on the medical reports, unknown. How does one gonad blow up 10, 15 times its normal size? And what did they do? Of course, they pumped him with antibiotics. What else are you going to do? People have been haunted and tormented, had unpleasant physical experiences. Whatever these things are, I wouldn't want them for my children. I certainly wouldn't want this happening in my family. So I'm not viewing it terribly, terribly positively, but I'm trying to figure out what on earth is going on. Now, I went through the old records of Israel. For the first time in my life, I read the Bible from end to end. Good book. They were despised by God. And we'll get to that in one moment. But, well, let's get to it now. When Joshua came back to the Holy Land, his first instructions, he was told, there are giants in this land, slaughter them. The Hebrew armies, the army of the Hebrews, were really God's instrument to wiping out these giants, these alien races. Now, there is one heck of a piece of physical evidence that I took Michael Hesman to. He was astounded. It's on the Golan Heights. It was only discovered in 1967 when the Golan Heights were liberated from Syria. It was completely hidden until then. It's called Gilgal Rephaim. Gilgal Rephaim means the circle of the giants. It's as good as Stonehenge. And it's absolutely unknown, but it's as good as Stonehenge. It's 5 concentric circles with a diameter of 159 meters. 39,000 tons of rocks went into this Gilgal Rephaim, the circle of the giants. Now, 5,000 years ago, the only people on the Golan Heights were nomads. These nomads were not megalith builders. They didn't leave monuments, a dolmen here, a dolmen there, but they certainly didn't go to this trouble. Now, the circle has 2 openings, one to the southeast, one to the north and southeast, yes. Scientists from the Hebrew University and from Harvard University calculated that 5,000 years ago, the summer solstice came through one circle, and the rising of Sirius 5,000 years ago came to the other. So it seems to be some sort of astronomical laboratory, but quite frankly, you can't prove it. One thing is absolutely certain. I'll give you a quote from a scientist. He said, why would they build a 39,000-ton monster like this 500 years before the pyramids, when a stick and a rock will do the same thing? There was something else going on. And you can't see this thing. It's really beautiful when taken from above. When you look at it from above, it looks like a flying saucer, actually. It's 5 concentric discs, but you can't see it from above. It's on a flat plane. The nomads of the time supposedly had no contact with Europe. None. In Europe, they were building the same sort of things. The local shepherds didn't have the technology and couldn't have built it. They wouldn't have wanted to build it, but they couldn't have. So who built it? It had to be outsiders. The only outsiders recorded in the land of Bashan, the Golan Heights, 5,000 years ago, were the giants. It's the only ones. Now, I've gone through this with rabbis. I've actually talked to rabbis. I said, look, could giants have really built this thing? They said straight out, according to biblical text, there were giants. Og was the king of Bashan. There were giants in the Golan Heights. Now, these giants, let me tell you, God didn't like them. Didn't like them one little bit. The last giant wasn't killed until after Joshua, almost 1,000 years later, when not Goliath. The last giant was Seth. It was killed by Seth. It had 6 digits and 6 toes, 24 toes. It's in the Bible. Now, what we're going to say is that the Israeli and Jewish tradition has giants within it. No doubting it. Israel was the home to the giants. These giants are back. They're back again. We never had them before, now we've got them again. Now, I'm going to say straight out that I don't like it. Now, maybe these are other giants, but I wish they would show up in other places. It would be a lot nicer if they would show up in Damascus for a change. Our neighbors aren't getting them. We're getting them. They want something out of us. You don't have giants running around Jordan. There are no reports of them running around Lebanon, but we got them in Israel. For some reason, they're targeting us. Now, it could be a long shot, but I don't know a better explanation for the giant wave in Israel. And I want to say that the biblical giants were God's enemies, and Israel's armies were the means for their utter destruction. And I'll tell you, in my opinion, there is a very legitimate reason to contemplate this recent rearrival of giants in Israel with a good measure of dread. Now, what I'm going to do now is unrelated to giants. However, I'm going to show you the quality of material coming from Israel. I went to a place called Kibbutz Chatzor last July. The claim there was that the finest, clearest, most remarkable UFO was filmed there over 3 nights. Now, let me explain a little background. Kibbutz Chatzor is in the area of Yavne. This is the same area. I wish I had a map, actually, next time. We're talking the biblical path of the Philistines. We're talking about the giants. The Philistines were in the area around Gaza. Yavne, here's Gaza, here's Yavne. It's on the direct route to ancient Philistine, in Hebrew, Philistina. Above Yavne, last July, for 3 nights, was one big ship. Now, I went to the kibbutz, and these UFOs in Israel are causing so much dissension because, frankly, people think there is something so profound going on that they're fighting for credit and responsibility. On the first night, this was, I believe it was July 20th. Yes, it was from the 20th to the 24th of last year. A family on Kibbutz Yavne, the son, Salah is his name, gets a beam through his bedroom window, walks outside, and sees this thing in the sky. He calls out his parents. They run and get their video camera, and they record it. Not very good. Not very good quality at all. The next night, the battery runs out. So they call a neighbor who runs a little studio in the kibbutz. She gets her camera, and now we're talking serious stuff. Sony 2000. Okay? Now, they get, for the next 2 nights, they record this thing. There's a morning shot, a brief morning shot where we can see the disc. This thing, now with a little luck, I'll be able to point it out. We just did the clipping and the editing right now. This thing had to have been a mile wide, or a mile. It was so high in the sky. But what they did with the camera, they focused in, I think, now it's up to you to decide this. You're about to see either the living quarters, energy vents. You're about to see a close-up of UFO's infrastructure. You've never seen this before. Never. I'm very proud to say that Israel has got remarkably good UFO footage and evidence. It looks to me like an orange skull. People have said to me it looks like a houseboat, a balcony. Someone just said a palace. My feeling is it's some sort of energy source from the UFOs. We don't know why. I believe there's questions tonight and someone wants to ask me. I do have theories. But I bring to you in Leeds, I think, the most remarkable close-up of the infrastructure of a UFO ever filmed. Big claim, but let's see if I'm right. Excuse me? Gotcha. Well, I'm glad I didn't have to drink. Daylight at Kibbutz Chatzor, sidewalk. There we go. There is our UFO. Typical. It's your standard ellipsoid disc-shaped UFO. It must, in my opinion, it must have been 30 miles up in the sky, and you'll see why. Maybe even more. You'll see why in a second. But here is our shape. You've seen that worldwide, nothing new here. Although it is a pretty one. Okay, we've seen that shape even in McKinleyville, Oregon. We know this shape. Close up. Now look at the sides. This is a monstrous machine. Go that way, go that way. The middle is maybe 10% of the size of the whole UFO. You can see the dim shape, possibly windows, lights, of the entire craft. Oh, now we're getting close to this thing. In comes the close-up. Whoa. Now, I think it's a skull. It looks to me like a skull, a giant skull. At the top, I see the two eyes, but that's not what it is, obviously. It is an orange glowing, okay, in we go, because I'm going to try, we tried backstage just now to get you those windows. Alrighty, now we're getting the windows a little better. Bet you never saw one of those before. Ooh, not a little too blurry. I hope we succeeded backstage to do it. Oh, now we're getting a little closer. Now, 100 witnesses saw this. The whole kibbutz, by the third night, everyone from the kibbutz was standing outside watching this thing. How do you like this floating over your house? Now, there we go. There's the windows, or the vents, or whatever you think they may be. That is your close-up of the infrastructure of a UFO. Whatever she may be, there it is. Windows, vents, teeth. Up to you. I don't know. I admit it. But I think this particular shape should be examined. Somebody should work on what we've got here. Because we've got things floating over Israel you don't have anywhere else. Audience, have you ever seen a UFO like this one? I think, and I hope, I've made my point. Something is going on in Israel that's going on nowhere else. Nowhere else. We're getting things burnt into our sand. We're getting giants running around, and we're getting UFOs with orange vents and windows and who knows what else floating on top of our country. Israel has been chosen. I think it's biblically related, but I know this. We don't fit the pattern. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.